Brookfield, Radiant acquiring Ori. So tell us about that.
It's been quite the ride. We started a software company. We've built the best software in the world to run applications across AI infrastructure in general. So it made sense to combine the best software in the world with the best team in the world with the best capital allocator in the world and the largest, basically, owner of powered land. Dedicating time to think is way underrated.
I've heard of employees getting fired now. Their AI slot cannon, especially like in marketing. It's $100 billion build out of land, power, data centers. You're joining as the president. So tell us about that. Mahdi, welcome to Under the Banyan Tree. How's it going today?
Thanks, Sam. Doing well. How are you?
I'm well, can't complain. Coming off the news of Brookfield, Radiant acquiring Ori. I know I met you a few years ago and you were moving into the GPU space, but congratulations.
Thank you, man. It's been quite the ride, huh?
Quite the ride, indeed. Tell us more about it. Like, what are you most excited about? What are some of the headlines around the M&A? And I'll start going into some more in-depth questions, but would love to just hear from you, your views on it and what you're most excited about so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we as Ori, we've been going for about 8 years almost now, and we started a software company. I believe we've built the best software in the world to run applications across distributed and AI infrastructure in general. And as AI started to become more mainstream, very quickly we realized that we needed to build our own infrastructure as well, and that's, I guess, when we first met.
Yeah.
So and we were very successful at that. We built a team that was extremely knowledgeable and capable to build and manage AI infrastructure and manage our software platform on top of that. And we gave customers a differentiated, strong product and experience running their AI workloads and AI models and applications and so on across the infrastructure that we've built. But obviously, very quickly, you realize that those two components are not enough to scale. Building physical infrastructure is a capital game, requires huge amounts of capital, requires CapEx. And it's not just the capital, it requires innovation in how you deploy this capital, how you structure this capital, and the way we do these things are constantly evolving now. How do you deploy capital for AI infrastructure specifically? It's a new asset class. The way you finance that is starting to evolve and change, and more people basically entering this space with new ways of actually financing this. And then the other basically component to that is obviously power and data centers and powered land and so on. So scaling requires new ways of deploying capital, but also requires a lot of power, as like gigawatts of power if we believe all the demand that's coming our way and basically the forecasted demand. So we we spoke to a number of partners in that space in terms of how do we take the business to the next stage. And Brookfield is one of the largest asset managers in the world. They're one of the best capital allocators in the world as well, and they've been investing in heavy assets for a very long time. They've had different ways of actually deploying capital for assets, and compute is just another asset that they were looking at. But also, they are one of the largest owners of powered land as well. They're an investor in data centers. They have a number of data center platforms that they own. And also they have a powered land portfolio and a powered land bank, up to 5 gigawatts of pipeline, basically, that they've been basically investing and developing themselves. So it made sense to combine the best software in the world with the best team in the world with the best capital allocator in the world and the largest, basically, owner of powered land in the world to effectively launch a new platform that combines these 4 pillars, of powered land, capital, compute, and software together to come to market with a new offering, which is now Radiant, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree around joining forces. You have one of the most well-respected commercial asset managers in the world. They've already built out at the minimum, 5 gigawatts from what I've read in power capacity. And I think I read 45 gigawatts of renewable generation, which we'll get into all those specifics. But here you have the capital, here you have the power, the land, and then you're bringing in the software expertise and the expertise, which is really hard to actually source the GPUs, stand them up, own the support level SLA with that end user. But just like taking a step back, like tell us about what the fully integrated AI cloud of the future with Brookfield Ready and you joining as the president leading it. What's that mean? What's that look like? And we'll start to get into a lot of details, but it seems like there's the fully integrated piece and the sovereign AI piece, but I want to focus on fully integrated first.
Yeah, I mean, we as Radiant, we're targeting two main pillars today. One is sovereign AI.
Yep.
We have a full solution and a value proposition and like a product, if you want, for sovereign AI specifically.
Yep.
And the other pillar is hyperscale, large-scale infrastructure, basically. And we're in discussions with a number of hyperscalers and different, basically, off-takers for large-scale infrastructure. Obviously, both propositions basically require a capital allocator and a smart capital allocator to basically take forward. But also, as you mentioned, they require a team to basically manage. Like SLAs are as you know, like the biggest, most important factor in managing infrastructure. So we, from a sovereign AI perspective, look, they've been a whole shift around the world today across large organizations and governments and sovereigns themselves around how does AI get developed and deployed and managed and used within our respective country or organizations and sovereignty and so on. And many of these organizations or many of these governments that we are in conversations with are mainly in a phase of exploration. They're asking questions. How do we achieve that? What's the capital requirement for us to achieve that? Technically, how do we achieve sovereign AI? You know, there's one thing deploying physical infrastructure within our countries, but then obviously running tenancies across this infrastructure, making sure the software is also within the sovereign boundaries, the control plane that we deploy across this infrastructure. Does it meet, the sovereign boundaries that we are basically, requiring? And this takes you into conversation that you can meet sovereignty with software, even though the infrastructure could be somewhere else as well. Because
so Mahdi, on that. So that is that's a really important distinction. So say I'm a company based in Switzerland. I need all of my data residing in Switzerland. You're saying, hey, the servers could be in a different country, but if it's an air-gapped, single tenant, exclusive environment, Brookfield Radiance hardware could still check that box, even if it's outside of that geo.
Yeah. So you can create, I mean, there's a whole concept around digital embassies today as well. And that could be basically achieved through software, So as Radiant today, I mean, we have a sovereign stack that talks, like, basically touches on the physical data centers. Like, we can build data centers, we can build behind the meter power for these data centers, for these projects. We can finance very large scale infrastructure, whether in country or outside of country, or a hybrid of both as well. We have a full software stack that can achieve sovereignty in so many different ways, whether in country or outside of country as well, or a hybrid as well that we can structure. And also, we can work on the go-to-market as well. So whether you're selling AI capabilities to local enterprises or local government entities and so on. So we're engaged in conversations like that and a number of projects like that. And Radiant basically comes with a full stack approach to this, and it's a flexible approach depending on what each project is and how basically each project leader is basically thinking about sovereignty and how they want to achieve sovereignty as well. And we play nicely with other clouds as well. So like the platform gives you a hybrid approach across Radiant infrastructure, hyperscaler infrastructure, like the traditional cloud infrastructure as well. And we can build, sovereign boundaries within that also. So it's a full basically solution that we brought to market recently to basically work with our sovereign partners at the moment.
I really love that value prop that you're touching on, of flexibility, because if I'm a customer or potential customer, what I'm hearing you say is, hey, we can meet your data sovereignty goals through a variety of different options and work together to find a solution for you. And the headline, when I obviously, because I'm an investor, I knew this acquisition was in the works, but the headline when it was finally announced is a big number. It's $100 billion build out of land, power, data centers. You're joining as the president, which is phenomenal. I love this value prop that you guys have put out too, of like bypassing and skipping the multi-year backlog. So tell us about that, because you're touching on it a bit, but with this power generation that you already have access to, with a lot of land that you've probably already acquired in real estate, tell us more about skipping that backlog and what that's going to look like for you and your customers.
So when we talk about skipping the backlog, if you compare it to our peers in the market, like some of our peers are dependent on co-location.
That's
so
right.
Dependent on the timeline of powered land and data center build-outs and so on of other organizations. They're dependent on third-party capital most of the time in terms of financing projects, right? And that's a long process. I mean, we've done that before, right? So it takes a long time. So securing that, then securing the financing for a contract and so on takes a long time.
And long time. So the listeners know, if you're even just a small cluster of 30, 40 million, could easily take 3 to 6 months, if not longer, to actually acquire the debt asset-backed financing for those servers to go in the data center.
Exactly.
And then procure them and wait for them to ship and the supply chain. So you could order it and it could be a year before the servers are even turned on and warmed up.
100%. And this is only the compute asset. I mean, and then the data center asset as well. There is, financing, there's letters of credits you need to give to the data centers, and you're basically dependent on their timeline of development. And most of the data centers would prefer a large hyperscale off-taker rather than some new players as well. And I'm not saying, we've worked with a lot of colo facilities before and so on, but it is harder, and it takes longer. So it effectively creates a backlog, and it creates a lot of dependencies on you as a provider. And it delays basically taking a project live, and it delays your revenues, essentially, right?
Right, because inference-based business is codependent on the servers. If they don't have the servers, they can't grow revenue or mind share. And it's a frustrating process, right? Like the customer's waiting for servers to come in, they're getting shifting timelines. They don't fully understand all the things going into even getting that service online for them. So this skipping the backlog is a huge value prop for Brookfield Radiant.
Exactly. So with the with the Brookfield backing at the moment, like we can skip a lot of that, and we can work on any project immediately, and we know we have the backing, we have the access to power and powered land and so on, and we have a pipeline of powered land today for the next 2 years that we have guaranteed, and we can work towards, and we can accelerate if we wanted to as well for certain projects and deploy, or we can build new as well for specific projects or specific customers also. So this kind of, when we talk about skipping the backlog, that's what we kind of mean as well. And this is a new way of looking at this market. I would say even our strongest peers, and there's some fantastic companies in this space that we work with, we compete, and sometimes we collaborate with, and it's been the norm of how they do things and how we do things in this space, and it's been a problem as well, I would say, to move quickly. So with this combination and with Radiant, we try to solve that basically through that.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, and I'm biased because I'm an investor, proud investor, but I do believe this could be a re-architecting of how compute comes to market. And you guys are building a new playbook here because you're that vertical integration, owning the software, owning the actual servers, owning the land, and owning potentially the power generation, or being deeply integrated and owning the underlying financing vehicles all in the same entity. I don't believe that's actually been done. Like if you look at CoreWeave, it's all outside financing partners. If you look at Nebius, same story. Whereas for Brookfield Radiant, this is all coming under the same umbrella. So I think we could see record-breaking like lead times, record-breaking server build-outs and private cloud build-outs that Brookfield Radiant's leading. So it's very exciting.
Exactly. I mean, that's the plan. I mean, the cost of capital, we're trying to get the cost of capital goes down as well, so that we can basically make access to compute even more attractive as well. So there's a lot of that work happening in the background today, and that's what we're working towards. Obviously, we just launched 2 weeks ago, but we're working on all of these plans, and that's the value proposition that we're putting together to the market.
Love it. One thing I wanted to ask you too, I saw SemiAnalysis led, and I think this will lead into talking more about your software stack, but Dylan Patel and the SemiAnalysis team, probably the most respected independent voice in the GPU space, they led a lot of the technical diligence from what I read on Ori. But tell us, what was it like to work with them? What were the things they were checking on? And how did you guys stand out? Because I'm sure Radiant was looking at a lot of potential companies, but just would love to learn about that.
I mean, I'm biased, as you know, so I'm going to say, we were the best anyway. No, I mean, it was fantastic to work with the guys. They did the technical due diligence through the process. They worked closely with a lot of the technical team we have, so I was involved in and out, but the real work was done with the engineers that actually built this. I can't claim I built this myself, as obviously we have some amazing engineers and amazing team that built our stack and our infrastructure and so on. So it was a process. They've gone through like how we build the clusters, how we build our software, how a control plane works. They went through all the details basically of end to end, not just the software. I mean, they were looking at our SLAs, even how do we keep our SLAs, how do we basically manage the infrastructure, how do we even do the procurement process for these compute clusters, what's our procurement process. We have a team that does that as well. What are the questions we ask, what do we look for, how do we make decisions for best practices, and so on. So it was a thorough process. It wasn't just the software. I mean, the software was a big part of that, but also the software alone can't operate without building reliable infrastructure and keeping it running as well. So they went through all of that through the due diligence process.
That's awesome. Also, I read too, and you could talk more about it, but Brookfield Radiant's a NVIDIA cloud partner. How will that relationship change or evolve from the relationship you already had, you and the team, and had already built a great relationship with NVIDIA, but how do you think that will evolve now with such a larger scale relationship with them? And you could even talk about their financial involvement. We'd love to just unpack that a bit with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll scale. We were an NCP, like an NVIDIA cloud partner, and NVIDIA has been a fantastic partner. They're still a fantastic and strong partner for us, and obviously that will continue as Radiant. So we work very closely with NVIDIA at different levels within the organization. They've been a great help for us in the past, and they will continue being a great resource to help us basically build more infrastructure and scale more infrastructure.
Love it. And are they bumping like Radiant up the list on the newest generations of hardware? Is there any exclusive sort of dynamics at play that you guys are negotiating with them or talking about?
No, I mean, obviously, we've always had access to the latest NVIDIA hardware. NVIDIA works equally with all their partners, and we will continue that. So we're looking to deploy now the Vera Rubin architecture as well very soon, and so on. And they've been extremely helpful in terms of access to that, understanding the technical architecture of that as well, understanding the roadmap and so on. And they did that before, and they're continuing doing that now even.
Makes sense. And I've asked a few, like Roman, the co-founder of Nebius, this question, and I have a point of view on it, but I'd love to hear what you say on, will Radiant be working with AMD or other silicon options like Positron, some of the more up and coming, highly specialized inference providers? Like, how are you guys thinking about that internally?
Look, at the end of the day, we go with what the customers want.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how we work. That's why we always worked. I mean, the customer is the most important thing for us. And NVIDIA has a fantastic product that is, well respected in the market.
Yeah.
And we work with all of the customers on NVIDIA architectures and so on, and we'll continue doing that, I would say. So we believe NVIDIA has a fantastic product as well, and a head start against a lot of other products. We respect all of the other providers and the the platforms and the products they're putting out there as well, and we follow them. We look at what they're doing, but at the end of the day, like, the market is NVIDIA today, and that's where we are as well.
Yeah. What's your view on the trillions of dollars? I mean, there's all these different estimates, like 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes even higher, of trillions of infrastructure that needs to be built out. And now Radiant's going to be right in the middle of that build out. What's your view on that? Like, do you think we're overbuilding? Are we underbuilding? Do you think it's going to take time for demand to actually catch up with the actual infra being built out? Or are we in lockstep here? Everyone is asking that question, in any interview these days in AI infra, but would love to hear your view on it.
I mean, the demand is not slowing down, for sure.
Right.
Like, and I see it. Like we have more demand than we can supply even today. And our peers have the same thing as well in the market. Like, from my conversations with them, I think we can't afford to underbuild. Anyway, and somebody said that, I can't remember who said that, and I truly believe that, right? Like, the cost of overbuilding is cheaper than the cost of underbuilding for this.
Yeah, I think that's a corporate strategy that Zuck from Meta has described.
Probably, yeah. I can't remember who said that. Probably Meta said that.
It's the big four, and that's their viewpoint is, like, exactly right. Like, you could bite the cost of an overbuild, and you can offload that infra pretty easily, but underbuilding and not being able to capitalize on this paradigm shift to inference, you can't really come back from that if your competitors beat you to it.
And it's not just, I mean, like, the way I see this is that intelligence in itself is becoming infrastructure, and if you look at like our civilization as a whole, we've always, like, organized ourselves around new forms of energy. Started with, like, railways, steam, oil, and now
even cavemen learning fire. Then
exactly. So exactly. We organize
the most basic thing, like
100%. We organize ourselves around energy. Like, we do this all the time. We organize ourselves around energy, like, exactly, fire. It goes all the way back, and it's ingrained in us as a civilization. We build our civilization on the basis of a new form of energy, and that basically drives how we build our entire infrastructure as civilization. And that brings in what comes next and so on. And intelligence is joining that list of forms of energy in itself, right? It goes beyond AI. It goes beyond chatbots at the moment, right? And when intelligence becomes infrastructure, it becomes ubiquitous, right? So if you look at it at a holistic view, like, the what we're building today is kind of like the infrastructure for intelligence as this form of energy that will eventually power our entire civilization moving forward. So this is beyond, are we overbuilding, are we underbuilding? This is a step change in how our civilization is going to evolve. And that's kind of how I see it. That's what I see, what we're building and what we're involved in, and why I'm doing, what I'm doing today, and why everyone in the company is doing what they're doing today. So overspecking, underspecking becomes a very trivial question, and it's all beyond. Do you have the conviction that this is a civilizational shift, and we're basically building parts of that shift, or we're building the backbone of that shift today through this infrastructure, no matter what form this intelligence is going to take over time? That infrastructure is going to stay, and it's going to be needed. So today we talk about LLMs, chatbots, we're talking about agents, and soon we'll talk about physical AI, becoming more and more of the topic, and what comes next and what comes next. And it would all lead back to this foundational infrastructure that is being built today to take this forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the way I've conceptualized this and I explain it to other people when they ask me about it is, if you think about our brain, we can only remember so much. We can only take in so much information per day. We can only output so much. Like, I can only communicate to Mahdi so many hours a day in a very concise way. Whereas AI, and specifically LLMs and generative AI, there isn't actually a limit on information input, information output. And so there'll be a shift. There'll be a shift where, for the first time in history, generative AI creates more intelligence in a day than all of humans combined.
Yeah.
Inputting.
Not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere,
and once that shift happens, the infrastructure underneath it is just going to be humming along, powering all of that.
Exactly. And that infrastructure could take multiple shapes over time.
Yeah.
But the platform underneath, and that's kind of like what we think about what we're building is a platform for that, right? Will evolve as well, but the foundations of that platform remains the same, basically.
Yeah. So
that's the vision. That's the vision we had 8 years ago when we started Ori, and nobody would listen back then. And to be honest, like, if I tell you I knew how it's going to be today, I would be lying. I didn't know how it's going to shape, but we had this idea that infrastructure is going to evolve. There's going to be different environments to run applications, and to basically do that in the right way, there needs to be a platform to orchestrate. And that's where the Ori name comes from. It comes from biology. The Ori DNA is the origin of replication of DNA. So we always thought about whatever we're building as this, like genetic code, DNA is the genetic code of everything living. So we thought, okay, our platform could be the genetic code of everything infrastructure, So it's still the same vision. It evolved, and it took so many different shapes and forms and so on, and now it's AI and so forth. But it's still moving in that direction, like the foundational layer for infrastructure for whatever comes in the future, and whatever applications and use cases and so on, AI takes shape in.
Yeah, I really love it, because the way I'm also as you're explaining it to me, understanding it is you don't have those intelligence outputs from AI without the infrastructure. So they're so intertwined that infrastructure is intelligence. Like,
exactly.
You can't have one without the other. They're married together.
Yeah. Or the other way is around. Intelligence is infrastructure as well, because if you think civilizations are built on top of infrastructure, it's being built on top of intelligence today. So intelligence is the infrastructure for the next civilization as well.
Yeah, it's very cool. With I want to talk about power generation, because there's different reports. Like, for example, in the state of Washington, Washington D.C. and Virginia, so not the other Washington, but in Virginia, they might be the first state where AI data centers actually consume more power than humans. And so the theory is, hey, there could be geopolitical issues coming up where, and you saw like the Google COO with Trump last week, sitting there saying, hey, we're doing all this stuff to not pass the cost of power increases to consumers. And, we're seeing potentially like reports in states where, like I was saying, in Virginia, data centers consuming more power than humans. That's a big issue. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think Texas could be next. After that, maybe Wyoming. So, with Radiant, it seems like you actually have a lot more power generation coming up from renewables, but I wanted to get into that more. How are you thinking about that as the president of such a big build out? What are your views on that? How do you see this evolving? Would love to dig into that.
Yeah, of course. Look, I think the traditional way of powering data centers is also evolving. Like we're starting to look at large scale behind the meter build outs, renewable build outs.
What does that mean? Like behind the meter or large scale?
So, I mean, you're not connecting to the grid. I mean, to simplify it for everyone else, right? You're not taking power from the grid. You're building, power specifically for the data center behind the meter of the grid, basically.
So you would basically be building your own generation of power.
Yeah.
So
yeah. This is public. Like Brookfield recently invested in Bloom Energy, which is a fuel cell behind the meter solution as well, and this is part of the Brookfield portfolio that we can leverage as well. There's a lot of companies today building for behind the meter power generation solutions as well. Modular build of data center that basically is built at 1 mega at a time with its own power generation as well. There's a number of companies around the world building in that space, I would say. So overall, like the way we're building power as well has to evolve, and it all goes hand in hand. Like Nvidia's releasing new chips that give you better compute output, but consumes less power than the previous chips as well. And this is where vertical integration becomes very, very important. Because if you're building in isolated pockets to build infrastructure for intelligence, then basically there will be leaks for in different areas. But if you start looking at it like we're doing at Radiant today as a holistic view of the power, the capital, the compute, and so on together as a vertically integrated solution, that's where you become innovative in terms of reducing cost, reducing power, you reducing emissions, you create renewable power for specific basically deployments and so on. To tell you what's going to happen, I don't know. Like in terms of the global energy,
because that's literally what my head was thinking. I want to ask him what he forecasts, like how much will be renewable.
I really don't. What I know is that what we're doing is that we're trying to solve for a lot of that today, right? And obviously, for the scale of the deployments that we are working towards, that would be significant, and that will basically play a role in improving that and solving a lot of these problems. But at the end of the day, this is an industry-wide, basically collaboration and industry-wide initiative, and there's a lot of people trying to solve for the same thing as well in that regard. But at the same time, we have to accept that AI needs more power, and again, like it's a civilizational shift, and it's a new way of building infrastructure for this, for what's coming next. And it will consume more power, but there's power that we used to consume for certain things that will shift for AI consuming that power as well, like certain tasks and certain things that we do as well. So it's not necessarily more from what we have today. It will be certain shifts going from traditional to AI. And it's on us as an industry to try and basically improve that and make it better. But again, as I said, like we need to accept the fact that AI will consume power for us to reach the goals that we want to reach as companies, individuals, and so on in AI.
Yeah, I think the fuel cell with Bloom Energy is really interesting, and we'll have to do another catch-up episode, down the road as you get more into some deployments and your power sources. I know nuclear is coming online, and there's more nuclear build out, small cell and big cell nuclear build out. So I think that will be interesting. I think the other interesting dynamic is, at least from what I read, 70% of the US power grid was built between 1950 and 1970. So a lot of that power generation infra is dying down. It's going to need to be replaced. Yet AI is consuming more and more power. So I do think we really need to innovate as a country, as a civilization, on generation power in a sustainable way.
And that's happening. I mean, there's the concept of adjacent power generation at the moment as well, and there's a number of companies looking into that and building within that as well. Yeah, I mean, nuclear is I mean, it's a bit of a controversial topic for some people, but I do believe nuclear is a great source of energy. It's clean.
It's relatively safe at this point as well.
Yeah. I mean, some people still disagree, but like you have, a lot of people looking at what do they call them? Is it micro reactors or
so. Yeah,
I can't remember the term now. So yeah, I mean, and I'm a big believer that nuclear should play a big role in this, and regulation around it should become a bit quicker and less cumbersome for people who are building nuclear energy specifically for data centers and AI.
Yeah, I want to shift to the Middle East a bit. So I remember when we were working together, I became an investor, became an advisor. We were working together on raising some money and had good success with that. One of the investors you landed was a division of Saudi Aramco, Wayad Ventures. I think people will be very interested to just hear from you. How do you do that as a CEO? How do you build trust with Middle Eastern investors, especially Saudi Aramco, largest oil company in the world? How does business function there versus the UK versus the US? Just would love to unpack that more because you actually did it. And even at Radiant, I think there's a lot of involvement in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So, I think it'd be fascinating to go under the hood here and talk about that more.
I mean, whether you do it in the Middle East, in the US, in Europe, or whatever, it's difficult anyway. It's
always harder than it should.
It's always harder, man.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
There is no specific formula for a specific region. I would say it's the same. Yeah, I mean, look, the Middle East is a big market, as you know. I mean, I come from the Middle East as well, so I have a vested interest in building stuff there, and we have a lot of partners in the Middle East that we are working with, and even now as Radiant as well, like Brookfield have partners in the Middle East that they've been working with, so we're combining those in ways to see how we can service these partners. There is no specific formula to work there. I mean, it's the same as any other region. You just need to know what you're doing, know what you're talking about, come up with the best product out there, and keep at it. Yeah, I mean, Aramco has been an investor in Ori through Wayad Ventures. They've been fantastic partners for us historically, and they're still fantastic partners even today in terms of investing and also helping us navigate some of the environment and business relationships within the Middle East and Saudi specifically, I would say. I mean, it's a shame what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, as you know, but we're still very bullish and optimistic about doing business there. We think it's a growing market, and there is some amazingly smart people doing things there as well, and we want to be part of that, and we want to be partners to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. How do you think that market will build itself out over time? Like, how much infrastructure do you think we'll see out there? How much of like the global cloud footprint, even for GPUs, do you think in 3 to 10 years time would be? I know that's a big delta, but starting just like even in 3 years, like what do you think the makeup will look like?
So, I mean, if you look at some of the countries there, like the cost of power is lower than a lot of areas in the world, right? So there's an advantage there of building, large scale infrastructure, whether for inferencing or even training or whatever comes next. There's a cost advantage towards power with power as well. I think, I mean, they're well positioned to basically build, and some of the countries are already, advocating for that and are pushing for that to build large scale infrastructure in their countries. And it goes back also to the sovereignty angle, I would say. So the way I see it is, if we achieve sovereignty through software, then the infrastructure will be built in the most suitable environment where there's enough power, the costs are, reasonable, and the connectivity as well is important. Like, if we're connecting from all over the world, and there'll be pockets of infrastructure for each region, and I think one or two countries will be the main, basically, hosts of these pockets of infrastructure for the regions around them, effectively. And I think, especially like countries like Saudi, Qatar, UAE, they have big ambitions. They're building some large plans around putting infrastructure there as well, and they could be the hosts for that region's infrastructure, I would say.
Yep. I have two questions. One, what are the constraints? And you spoke about it, but like network bandwidth, just moving these workloads globally. Put aside the security, because it sounds like you pretty much solved that on sovereignty. But what other constraints? It has nothing to do with Brookfield Radiant and Ori, but like, what actual constraints are there that still have to be worked through and massaged, you would say, to get to those bigger plans that these regions have?
I mean, obviously, latency still plays a part, right? In terms of like the distance between the request from a device all the way to where this request is being processed, because it's going through cables and cables and cables, right? So it doesn't make sense if you are in the Middle East and your request is being processed in servers, I don't know, like in Europe or in even North America, right?
South San Francisco, right?
Yeah, because you're traveling very long distances,
So then that cost you had on lower power starts to erode with inference.
Yeah, there'll be cost for connectivity and so on. So, and that's where I talk about pockets of compute for a variety of different regions. And we're starting to see some of that thinking and build-outs happening. Like Europe has their own plans and ambitions with the Gigafactory projects as well. Middle East have their plans and ambitions for that. All these compute, basically, build-outs will still be, connected. They're not isolated islands. They will still be connected globally. But then you're serving the local, ecosystem through these pockets of compute. And hyperscale clouds do that today. They build regions, and then each region is being built. Each region supports local, requests.
And it's priced. It's a price card, right? You pay the price for that region. If you need that inference or latency target, then you pay that price. So Radiant, it's not necessarily like you can't change the gravity of the situation, even in those regions. That's just kind of how it's going to function there.
And I think, I mean, this is a global build out again for infrastructure for intelligence, and it's not going to be one country. It's not going to be one region. It's going to be a global build out, and we need to, partner with all of those and help them build it and scale it.
Yeah, like I think I read you already have Radiant has projects in France, Qatar, and Sweden. I think those are some of the countries headlined, and I'm sure there's
many projects we're involved in.
Okay, and then I guess another sort of question I have. Hold on, I'm just pulling up my notes on this. Timeline on IPO, and I don't know how much you can say on this, but like, I know you guys have a lot of power, you have a lot of land, you have great financing facilities in place. You now have the Ori team there to sort of activate all of this. But what's your guys' vision on becoming that global power player and building in the public versus private light?
Well, I mean, we don't think about it this way. Like at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. That's probably how the investor in me thinks.
Yeah, look, I mean, it hadn't even crossed my mind, to be honest.
Yeah,
we didn't think about it. Look, I mean, we have the chance to build something really big at the moment, and
like very, very big, like 100 billion.
The only focus, exactly, and the only focus I have, and the team has, and the Brookfield team has as well, that are partners with us now, is to make this as big as can get.
Execute. Yep.
So exactly. So whatever that means later on in the future, an IPO is just a liquidity event or
That's
vessel.
right.
That's how I see it, right? It's not a target. It's not a mark of success or anything like that, right?
No.
And our core focus is to, make our customers happy, build the best solutions or product for our customers, and then things like an IPO or everything else, I see those as a byproduct of that.
Of that execution. Yep.
Exactly, and that is a decision we'll make later based on the circumstances and so on, what's needed. So it's not really a target on itself. There's multiple ways how you can grow and build a business and scale it.
Love it. Now, that makes total sense. And it's what's best for the customers and the business, and you just got to execute. So I want to talk about some personal stuff as we kind of wrap it up. So company struggles. I think you're in one of the few companies that pivoted from an edge computing to GPU cloud to now Brookfield Radiant. And what was that like? Like, this could be a potentially life-changing kind of acquisition for everyone at the table. How did you get through that pivot, that 8 years? Like, give us the story there.
I mean, it's not really a pivot per se, like the mission is still the same.
Right. But from the original Ori to the GPU shift.
The underlying technology we've built from day one is still the same underlying technology that powers what we do today. I think there is there's two ways of building a company, right? Either there's a pressing problem in the market today that is very clear, 1 + 1 = 2 type of problem, and you just go build a product for that and you solve it, right?
Yeah.
And you charge for that, solution that you brought to the market. And then there's another way of building a company where you just have to guess what's going to happen in the future, and you start with the technology and to find a problem to solve, right? And that's a very hard way of building a company. Like, if I go back, I would say, like, I would never do that again, probably. And that's kind of what we've done. And that's where, when you do that, like, you're guessing what's going to happen in the future, and then you're trying to build a technology for that. And it's very much technology driven to begin with. There's no customers, there's no go-to-market, there's no all of these things, right? You're just basically thinking about what's going to happen, how we're going to build the technology, but also at the same time, you're listening to the market, to the existing market, and you're observing and you're looking at the data, and you're looking at how this market is evolving and how the technology that I've built is applying and evolving with that, So, when we started, we said, okay, infrastructure is going to change. It's going to be distributed potentially. There's going to be new environments where we're going to run applications. There's going to be new chips and silicon where these applications are going to run, and they might be in different environments. They're going to require different architectures, different power envelopes, and so on. And let's build a solution to run applications within these environments. So back then, edge computing was a thing, was on the rise. And it is a thing. I mean, with content distribution networks is a thing, but we're talking about applications and so on.
Sure.
So we started with that. And even back then, machine learning on its own, like we were talking about machine learning at the edge for robotics and physical AI and so on. And people used to give this example of self-driving cars and so forth as a use case. Now, it didn't scale as we wanted to scale. The market was not there. The edge computer did not basically become mainstream or scale, and there was no way to build a big business on the back of that. So with the work we've done with machine learning and AI started to grow, then effectively we grew with the market, And this is the hard path of growing with the market, because you need to shift, not necessarily pivot what you're building specifically. We weren't building, I don't know, like a SaaS app, and then we decided to build, it was the same technology evolving.
Same foundation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The same foundation evolving with the use case and with the market. And, like, you need to keep your ear on the ground, look at the data, understand how this market is evolving, and also evolve quickly, your technology for that specific use case, until you get to a point where there's a big problem that you're solving, for that. And that's kind of what happened. And the evolution to Radiant is basically what we've been doing, but just gave what we're doing a much bigger platform to scale from here.
Yeah. That is fascinating. It's like you built the foundation of the edge computing, machine learning. You were sort of gauging where the market could go and the demand could go, but it was a very tech-focused company.
Mhm.
Then you saw the transition happening in the world to GPU-driven data centers. So you apply this foundational technology to the data center.
Yeah.
And then now you're applying your foundational full stack you were already doing at Ori, because you were doing the debt financing, you were putting it in the data center. You did have, as you said, the best software to run on those servers. And now you're just even building a bigger foundation,
Yeah.
but with the one you have.
We're constantly building foundations, I'd say, like, and evolving with the market. But yes,
yeah, pretty
and,
crazy.
we worked even like 8 years ago. We worked with GPUs. We used to have like a on our desk. We used to have like we were in a co-working space, like open plan co-working space. We didn't even have our own room, and we had like a bank of desks. There was like 6 chairs, and at the end of the desk we had like a little rack that had like GPU servers in it, and also had like different types of servers. These were for testing, and it was this like, I think it was like a co-working space. I can't remember which company it was, but like people used to walk by, and most of them, they're like, SaaS startups doing very different things and so on. And everyone's
Right.
like, "What the hell is this thing on your desk?" And it was very noisy. It was break all the time because it basically heats up and so on. So we've always worked with these types of technologies, but as the market develops and as the use case and the application becomes clearer and clearer, you just narrow down and focus on that one. And that's what we've done basically over the years.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I started in the AI stuff in 2018, and back then it used to be like PhD level machine learning engineers or deep learning engineers at Uber or these really big companies kind of hacking away on a very complex model together with sensitive data access. And it was already back then creating big business value,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like democratized to consumers in the sense you were interacting with an LLM like you do now, or it just wasn't at this like scale. So
Yeah.
Gen AI sort of changed that whole dynamic. And every company is now becoming an AI company, or they might not make it. That's kind of like the way Gen AI removed that. So it's cool to hear your story with that. What advice, like I wanted to ask you this, would you give your younger self? Because you've been a founder. This isn't your first rodeo. Like you built
No.
another company past 100 million in revenue
Yeah.
before this whole Brookfield Radiant Ori story. So, I mean, you've been doing this now pretty much your whole career. So I'm curious what you tell your younger self if you were getting going again.
About many things.
Yeah, let's hear them. That's what people want to hear, That's like
Yeah, look, I
stuff.
mean, the older you get, the more you appreciate thinking and slowing down, I would say.
Yep,
Especially when you're building
clear.
things. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like dedicating time to think is way underrated, I would say. Like when you're young, you're just like doing.
Go, go, go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes like if you take time to think, like actually sit down and think, I see that as a form of work. You would save yourself a lot of time and mistakes, I would say.
Yep. Because you're sort of processing and engaging and sparring with what you think you know to extrapolate it down to what you actually know and where you making assumptions.
Exactly. And look, I mean, running a company in general is just making a series of decisions,
And, yeah,
and you need to make as many right decisions as you can. So if
like your
you
hit rate on being right needs to be very high.
exactly, it needs to
Also
grow.
being wrong, it
Yeah,
can't.
I mean, you always be wrong. I'm still wrong today,
And you learn because that's
yeah,
your
exactly.
feedback loop.
Yeah. So I would say take time to think about things sometimes, because you might get it right, more times,
Yeah,
over time.
I think that's a lot of CEOs that scaled to very big outcomes scheduled literal, like they just keep their calendars free before certain times, or certain times you
Yeah.
can't, they're unreachable, and that's like their time they're just engaging in
Yeah.
what decisions they're contemplating.
Yeah, early morning for me is always blocked for just thinking, basically. I mean, sometimes you can't maintain that. You'll have to have calls and meetings and most of the
Yep.
time. But
Urgent stuff.
I
So
try and maintain that as well. And this is something like my dad used to tell me, like early morning is thinking time. And I never understood it until I actually, went through the the all the experiences to actually appreciate that. When I was younger, I never understood it or appreciated it, but now looking back, I do, and I wish I listened probably much earlier. Yeah.
well, I love that you're sharing that advice. Thank you. Um, Talking about your childhood and your dad, and I think you grew up in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And also, I think the listeners would love to know about your theater background. You used to own an art studio. I think you have a pretty robust
Yeah.
collection at this point. And the other thing, because I've worked with you, is your very strong, keen eye for design. So there's all
Yeah.
these paradigms in your life way outside of technology, but would love to hear your story more about all those.
Yeah. I've always appreciated arts in general, and specifically performing arts, I would say, since I was a kid.
Where'd that come from, Mahdi? Was it your dad or just reading or just
No.
visually walking around and seeing pretty things and being like, if they speak to you?
Yeah. My mom had an appreciation for the art as well, and probably I got some of that from her, like growing up as well. I mean, she used to paint at home and things like this. So, but I don't know. I mean, it's something that I think grows with you. I really don't know. Like,
Yeah.
environment plays a role, and then you basically get interested in that. And we're all like, most of my like siblings and my family are kind of interested in the arts and in one way or the other. Um, and I guess like appreciation for design is something, I don't think it's something you can learn. Maybe, I don't know. It's something that you either have or not. You know.
Yeah.
Um, and Yeah, I mean, I've had that appreciation for storytelling in general, and I look at it from so many different angles. Like, good design is good storytelling as well. You can tell a story through good design. Design needs to be intentional, I would say, in general. So by intentional, I mean like you need to have a reason why you're designing something in a specific way. Without going too philosophical into the philosophy of design now, because we want end. But and that could be applied to a lot of things, right? So good art is intentional, and good art comes from a specific place and a reason, and it's telling a story of a specific story in whichever form it takes, whether it's a painting or a sculpture or a film or a play. It's all intentional. That's what good art is. And like, as when I wanted to go to university, I knew technology because I was involved since I was 6 years old. I taught myself, using the terminal and coding and so on MS-DOS even back then and so forth. And I didn't think like going to business school was that exciting, and I didn't think like I thought that these things I could learn by doing. So in London here, like it was 2 years after starting my first company, I decided to go to university, and I went to theater school because like London is the theater capital of the world. Um, and Again, I don't think I had intentions to work in the theater space, or become a theater practitioner, but it was a different thing to learn, which was probably different than learning from the books. I've read a lot about it, I still do, but practicing the performing arts in general, taught me a lot of things around even storytelling as well, because it's all about storytelling, and also teaches you about characters and how you break down characters and the psychology of people. Because when you read a play, you're looking at a two-dimensional view of people.
Interesting. Yeah.
When you analyze a play, you're going through like the three-dimensional, four-dimensional things that are not written on a paper, but it's basically why these specific characters are doing what they're doing. Because if you're going to be an actor playing that role, you need to understand the background and why your character is saying that. It's not just
Sure.
about what they're saying, is what they're saying that. So it teaches you a lot with the complexity of people, relationships of people, and how the world really operates, because the world is ran by people. And eventually, you know, in business, it's the same thing, right? It teaches you how to sell, how to tell stories, and how to, you know, motivate people, how you build structures and how you build stories. Because as a leader, you're constantly selling and telling stories to your team, to your prospective employees, to your investors, to your customers, and so on, you know. So I feel like I you know, aside from having an appreciation for that world, you know, it's not a standalone world. It touches on everything we do as humans, and it's a way to learn about, you know, humans and how they operate.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, me just repeating it back, like how I'm understanding it, it sounds like it really helped you think on many different levels of analysis.
Mhm.
And then specifically with like emotion and motivation and how others will perceive certain
Yeah.
stories, right? Because like you're saying, if you're writing a play, it's not just like, hey, what do I write? What is each person's name? What do they do? It's how do they interact with other people inside of that
Mhm.
story? And then it's how do people watching this story or reading it, how are they going? It's like so much analysis, and it's like your brain developed that from your studies, and it's really fascinating to see how that then go. And it's totally different, but very
Yeah.
much the same applying into the business world.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's some amazing writers who write in theater, and you learn a lot from those as well, you know. And it's all about world building, because
Right.
every play, every film script is building a whole world on its own, and you know, just building worlds and building arcs and building all of these things is fascinating for me, you know.
I know you're on this note expecting a daughter coming up when she gets older and ask you, "Hey, Dad, what should I study in college?" Would you, with AI now and coding becoming democratized, would you say, "Hey, you should consider studying theater and arts to understand people because people skills are the dominant skill that matter the most?" Or I
Right.
guess I'm curious how you see that, like with
I don't
education.
know. I haven't thought that far. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
even know. I mean, I don't know, 18 years from now, like, I don't know what education is going to look like.
it's crazy to think about,
No,
right?
I know, I
Because
know.
you could just like learn anything now if you click a few buttons and you have the
Like,
motivation.
I mean, one thing that worries me is that if, like, you know, I lived at a time before the internet. You know, like I grew up at a time before the internet, and you know, like I knew how the world looked like before the internet. Like the access to information and everything else was so different. And now, you know, you have, you know, people who are born that they don't know the world before AI
They
even as
don't.
well.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so how would that affect our cognitive abilities as humans and our access to knowledge and so on? You know, it's something is fascinating. I think a lot about, and would it make us better as a species? Is it going to change how our brains function even as well?
It
Because,
has to, right? I mean,
you know,
I think I'm not an expert in this in any way, but I think I've read headlines around how heavy like LLM or Gen AI usage, like it decreases
yeah,
problem solving skills because you're not using that part of your brain necessarily that you maybe would have had to in the past. So
yeah,
it has to change something, right?
no, exactly. And like, I mean, it's an accelerator of how we do things as civilization, and like there's no
Sure.
doubt about it. And it's but at the same time, I think about um how individuality is going to look like, because individuality was very much about how we do things, like if you're an artist, or how you write things if you're a writer, or how, you know, anything, you know, because you were completely dependent um, on your own knowledge that you accumulated, on your cognitive abilities to produce things to the world, right? Now we're dependent on AI, which knows everything, but it produces things in a bit more uniform way, you know.
Yeah. It's
And that's
very
something.
yeah, it's like I don't want to say generic, but like yeah, I wouldn't really say like oh AI is like making some artisan output that's
No,
going to be like in a museum one day. I don't know if we'll get that kind of thing from an AI, you know?
you never know. I mean, it's a tool. So like
Yeah, it's a
individuality
tool.
change. We
Yeah.
still use it as a tool, but individuality would potentially change. And that's something I don't know. I don't have an answer to, but it's something I think a lot about as well. You
Yeah.
know? It's like the greatest writers in the world had their, they are the greatest writers because the way they wrote, because the way they thought, because the way they delivered messages to us. But now, you know,
Yeah,
everyone
like
writes
how
with
will
AI.
even yeah, like how will writing change even? Like the
Yeah.
greatest writers born in the AI native era, how will
Are
that
we
change?
gonna have writers that way? I don't
Will
know.
we have
Like,
writers? Will we
yeah,
have a Shakespeare
yeah,
or a Hemingway that
yeah, yeah.
came from, I don't know. Yeah, because you're just like from the day you're born onward, your knowledge process is so different now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it's
so
totally
the
different.
way I think about it is going back to your question, like, you know, if I if I'm basically looking at the child forming today, I would try and instill individuality in them because
Yeah.
there's no way they're going to there's no way you can remove them from what's happening right now. And I don't think we should, because I think AI is a fantastic thing and it's something that we
Yeah.
should use and
It's a
embrace,
great
right?
tool, like you said. It's a great tool.
But how do you basically create individuality in a person that is born within the AI era? Is a big question. And if I have to do it to my own basically child, that's kind of what I would focus on. Beyond education and everything else, is how would you create individuality there?
Yeah.
Is a big.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if you ask most social media executives, like their kids aren't allowed on phones more than like 30 minutes or an hour a day. I think with Gen AI, it's got to be very similar to that,
Yeah.
and making sure they, yeah, like enlist and develop their values, develop their worldview, their critical thinking skills, because it can't just be let the AI decide all these things for you your whole life. Like in adolescence, the AI is just telling you all these key things about yourself that you should be doing. Then
Yeah.
you don't really know yourself if that's how you've developed your thought process, decision making process in the real world.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I've honestly never gone that deep on this, but I'm glad we did. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's pretty
Uh,
cool.
yeah, I know, man. I mean, there's no answers. It's just like we can
Well,
go
it's
on
like,
and
dude,
on.
I've heard of employees getting fired now because of AI, because they're AI slop cannons. So they're just putting frickin' just slop out there on, especially like in marketing, right?
Yeah.
Job is to tell a great story, have a really thoughtful way of delivering a compelling message and narrative, and also presenting factual information. And, AI can also like, it should help maybe speed that up or guide you, but you still have to have that individuality. So I'm actually hearing, and I don't think that's talked about a lot, but it can actually hurt your performance if you misuse the tool. And it's
Yeah,
a
of course.
real thing I'm seeing happen.
No, I think so. And it's when you just take whatever AI tells you and you just publish it,
Slop cannon it out.
it's very
Yeah.
obvious. And like I use AI a lot, but I take what it does, I put it together, I think about, which AI is not able to do that yet. I would say it might in the future as well, but there's
Yeah.
that, you know, uh, you know, the construct of what you're trying to say. Uh, AI can help you get there quicker, but you still need to add a lot of your own, basically thinking and structures in there to deliver something different.
Yeah. Like today, I'm really close on launching an investment, and I'm completing the diligence. And I had my Claude write a memo, and it just looked like so I'm going to write my own memo. I'm
Yeah,
glad Claude said what it said. And I mean, there's a lot of documents. This is a big investment we're doing. And it's like a great example. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to do this my way and how I would say it. And that's how my LPs would understand it anyways, much, much
yeah.
better.
But it
Um,
helps you get there quicker, so like
yeah,
at least
yeah,
starting
yeah.
point, and it's an acceleration tool. It's a catalyst for us as
Yeah.
humans.
Like I haven't seen the investment docs. I'm not an investor in OpenAI, but like Amazon put this AGI clause. I'm curious if you heard about that.
No.
Um, like how do you measure AGI, right? Like a good portion of their investment that they made in this last round is contingent unlock on AGI.
Wow.
So about this whole higher cognitive load thing coming from AI, like it clearly they're already aligning financial incentives
Yeah,
around financing around this.
I haven't. I'll look into that. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Mahdi, anything else you want to cover or talk about today before we wrap up?
No, thank you very much, man. It's good to see you as always, and good to speak. And hopefully next time we'll do this in person, either in London
Yeah,
or in New York, where you are.
I will definitely take you up on that. I'd love that, Mahdi. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.